to be or not to be? That is the question.
Hello and welcome to the Transform podcast, B2B or not to be. I'm Veronica Hannon, Director of Transform, and with me I have...
I'm Sally Goodall, I'm Account Director at Transform.
I'm Georgine Tucker and I'm the Senior Graphic Designer at Transform.
And today we're going to talk about in-house or outsource, and particularly focusing on what to do when you've decided to use an agency or a consultancy and what those next steps should be. So I think that's really the first question is, you're a client, you've made the decision, you're a business owner, you're a marketing manager, you've made the decision to work with an agency. George, what do you think are the most important things that somebody needs to know?
That we aren't here to take over. We are not evil people trying to get our way kind of thing. We're there to help, to work with you. I know I used to be an in-house designer, and sometimes when external designers would come in, you'd feel really nervous that what you handed over just would come back looking completely different. So yeah, knowing that actually most agencies, most consultancy, and I know that we particularly try really hard to look at brand guidelines and, you know, whether that be regular meetings with the design team or the marketing team to make sure that we're on track. So yeah, just knowing we're not that scary, I promise.
That's exactly right. And actually that you are there to help them get the best. You're there to help a client. Sally, from a sort of an account director perspective and management perspective, you know, a new client comes on board. What's the process that you think works best?
Well, so we tend to have an initial meeting with them, which is normally half an hour to an hour to sort of understand who they are a little bit and their business. But then we go into a much deeper session with them as well, which is normally half a day to a whole day, where we really get to know them, their business strategy, what they're hoping to get out of marketing, how they want to align it with their business development or their sales strategy. And hearing how they talk about their business is so key. It just helps everything. We like to say that there are no stupid questions as well. Obviously, you know your business inside out. We want to know it inside out as well, so that everything that we're putting out for you is on point and what you need it to be and what you need it to say.
And I think it's that aspect of, you work with a marketing agency or consultant, and we will always go through this, right? Agency or consultancy, we always fall on the side of consultancy because it's about that partnership and really understanding. But from that perspective, it is like the time and investment that you would put into bringing somebody new onto your team.
Definitely. And I think it's that thing where you get in what you put out. So I think maybe sometimes you might be feeling that the agency or consultancy you're working with aren't giving you what you want, but maybe you haven't done that upfront time investment to teach them, oh, this is how we work. This is our tone of voice. This is our branding, or this is what's worked for us in the past. You've got to bring them up to speed, and then they can go running and they can really run with what you have and evolve it and grow it into something bigger and better, hopefully.
Absolutely. And if clients haven't got all of those tools or collateral, they don't have the brand guidelines, they don't have the tone of voice, they don't have the values that are there. Our job is to help them through that process. So Sally, that you sort of mentioned that.
Yeah, we like to advise. We don't have necessarily all the answers. We have our opinions and what we think could work, but we're not going to push you one way or the other. If we think something about your brand, we might suggest a change in one direction, but we're not going to force anything upon you. It's your decision at the end of the day. That's why I think consultancies, we like to say that we're a consultancy, because it's that advising and that interaction and just working with the teams.
And being honest, I think, is like one of our core values, obviously, is being honest. But I think actually tying that back to like the deep dives that we do, it's really interesting what a company says on paper that they think and that they are, but actually in those deep dives, the amount of times you guys have come out and been like, oh no, they actually said all this amazing stuff, and we can have that honest conversation going, actually your business is more than what you thought, it's this, like celebrate that in your marketing. And that's such an interesting thing that an outside perspective can give.
You're absolutely right. It's that outside view. And if you spend the time and really properly talk to people, it's those golden nuggets that suddenly come out, and you're like, oh, the way they've just described that is really, really interesting and actually could help. And Sally, I loved your point about, there's no such thing as a stupid question, because you're absolutely right with that. If things aren't clear to us, they also might not be clear to the public or the audience that they're hoping to reach. So getting that sort of real clarity up front, and Google helps, doesn't it?
Yes, definitely.
Particularly in some of the complex businesses that we work with. But it is also about really understanding how people are describing or talking about things that the ideas come from.
We just met with a client actually that we asked them, they had some icons on their logo, and we said, what do these icons mean? And they were like, it's in the brand guidelines, we don't really know. And then as the conversation went on, we realized that actually those icons could be aligned to their values, and then that could make sense and purpose of those icons.
And that's the whole thing with brand, isn't it? It's giving it a sense and a purpose.
Yeah, it shouldn't just be slapping it on. I like this color. I like this typography. It should actually have a meaning that goes back to a core value, or maybe it's a historical event or figure, or how the business was formed. But yeah, it should have something more than just a shape or a name. But onto that point of like, sometimes I think businesses grow maybe so big that they lose their way a little bit. And I think actually having a consultancy come in and ask those stupid questions and be like, oh, what does this mean? And finding out, oh, our internal team don't realize that. Maybe we do need to realign, reassess what we're doing. It really helps to have someone point that out.
Absolutely, it does. And it also sort of ties it back to the whole business strategy, and that we often get employed to be able to work on external communications. But you're absolutely right. If you're doing something that has real meaning and purpose behind it, then it becomes an internal comms tool as much as anything. And I think it also helps with feedback. So, if you're presenting something back to a client and every aspect of it has been thought about, then there's a rationale for it.
And collaboration and having that as a value is so important, because it's not a one-way street. Like you said earlier, Sally, about we aren't here to tell. We are here to advise, guide, be a sounding board, and collaborate on ideas. Like recently we had a client who had a really strong internal design team, and instead of me saying, no, go away, this is my design, this is my project, I had regular catch-ups with him. He walked me through the brand guidelines, and we collaborated on a mood board for the thought leadership. And then it turned into something that he was really proud of as well, because he had his input into it. And I think that collaboration is so important between agency, consultancy, and business.
And it just in terms of a new client comes on board and we do that deep dive, what then is the process? Because we've got a structure, haven't we, Sally?
Yes, definitely. So we'll take all of the discussions and we'll write up our notes, and from that we'll put together our strategy, what we think would work for the client and what could be good. And we lay it out as a bit of a shopping list. People can pick and choose what they want to take and what they could take internally. And that's how it's the extension of their business, really. These are the things that we can help you with, whether that's delivering or strategy or both, which is really great.
And I think also from that consistent perspective, you head up an account team, and George, you from a design team, actually having a single point of contact for a client to be able to come back to, somebody who understands, who's been there all the way through from that, very initial onboarding, finding out, developing the relationship, really helps then internally for us as well to be able to ensure that, George, you're fully briefed, or the graphics team or the SEO team absolutely understand. And then the account team become a real part of the client's team.
Yeah, they're not... Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, I love it, because instead of having to, go to a client who might be super busy because they're running their business as well, I can go to Sally or another account manager, and because you guys have such good knowledge, it's like talking to the business itself, and I can ask, oh, do you think they would like this kind of thing? And you guys, with grounded reason and strategy behind you, can say yes or no, and that's wonderful for a designer to boycott the might be a longer conversation with a client and not bother them as well, because they are busy.
And that's the thing, they're not juggling all of these different arms or designs or things like that. We're the central point for us and for them, which is great. So
what happens when things go wrong in relationships between marketing agencies and consultancies and clients? What are those things that you've seen or heard when it hasn't worked?
I think a big one for me is the lack of communication when someone from the client side is just unhappy, or maybe, the agency saying everything's great, everything's wonderful, things are going brilliantly, we've got it all down, but the results that the client are receiving are actually really bad and something's not happening. But when they might try and communicate that, then just met with like a brick wall. And I think that communication from the offset is so important to make sure that client and agency know what they're doing and they're all aligned in the same path. And things do go wrong. Sometimes you don't get the results you want, but being communicative early on is so important. That's what I found.
And listening as well, I think. So when we've had some feedback from some of our recent deep dives, and when we fed back our outputs, they've been like, yes, you heard what we said, you listened, you are getting us, which is great. And then having those open and honest conversations and heading it off early. If something doesn't feel right to the client, then, we can talk about that and we can work through it.
And there's always that aspect of you spoke about being honest and having that sort of honest communication, and a lot of that is things might not be 100% all of the time, but actually that initial feedback, particularly in those early stages, is really the collaborative process in action, isn't it? Have we got this? Does this sound like you? Does this look or feel like you? Because that's our job, is to translate that into a way that then becomes really appealing to the outside world or the audience that they're going for. But yes, it's sometimes pushing clients to also say, okay, if you don't, please tell us.
And like George's feedback video, giving us the clear feedback is how we can learn and grow. And
And that also can include sort of really focusing on different aspects. So rather than a generic, it's not quite right. In what way? What has emotionally triggered you, or doesn't feel right, or doesn't look right to you?
Drilling down, because sometimes it is a personal preference, and that's totally fine. If you are avidly against the color purple, that's totally cool. But it's drilling down as to whether that's conflicting with your business needs. And I guess, drawing it back to that business strategy is what we can do. We can say, actually, from a business point of view, this font might not be working for you, but actually this kind of font might be right for your business, or, this kind of marketing strategy might be right for your business, even though you might not 100% agree. And hopefully we can prove to them and show them that, we are knowledgeable in this. We got that breadth of knowledge. And I think that's also a benefit of working with agencies, because we're working across different industries, different niches. We're consuming so much interesting information. We can use that from like a logistics company to a finance company. It's interesting how that crossover can happen as well.
I think that is absolutely one of the core reasons of working with a consultancy, and it's that external view, it's that external knowledge that you have. So not only do we have experts in graphic design or video or content, but also we do get to know lots of other industries, and a lot of them, because we focus a lot on B2B, a lot of them are clients and the audiences for other industries.
Definitely.
So for example, you might be working in construction, but knowing then the house builder industry is quite important. Knowing a little bit about solar technology is quite important, because all of its sort of manufacturing processes, engineering, finance, all of it feeds into the content. And I think that's what we find. I find so exciting. Is give me a new industry,
definitely,
and be able to learn all about it.
We had sort of recently with a client, and I think I'll preface this. Sometimes I think B2B industries think they have to be very stuffy, very blue, very navy, and like dark and serious, when actually people want something different. People want something that excites them. And we had one client who, we produced this brochure for them, and they were like, oh, well, usually it's just a Word document. It's just a very simple, easy document. It was like, well, actually, with another construction business that we worked for, who was specializing in solar panels, we did something a little bit more exciting. We made it feel like a B2C product, and actually their response from their B2B clients loved it. And they took it on board. That's a new client, and they went with the exciting one. And it's amazing to see that actually they're embracing a new way of thinking. And I don't know whether they would have had we not been brought in for different projects, which is really nice to see.
I think that aspect of B2B should be this and B2C should be that. People are people at the end of the day, and
we're all consuming.
We're all consuming in all sorts of different things. So what you respond to as a consumer when you're flicking through your Instagram posts will be the same type of things that you might look at if you're looking at LinkedIn from a more professional perspective and that type of networking aspect. And I think as much as visual, that also goes into content, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We talk a lot about tone of voice in content writers, where people might think actually we have to be very respectful, very matter of fact, very formal in our approach, because these are busy people. Actually, if you have a much more informal, casual, approachable perspective, it cuts through the noise much more.
It doesn't have to be all one way or all the other, just slightly off center is perfect, I think. Yeah.
And there might be different cases, like it maybe on your social media and your website is slightly more informal, a little bit more inviting. But then if you have a product brochure, that's where it's a little bit more matter of fact and, very clear and concise. So it's knowing what is appropriate when
and for what audience.
Yes, definitely.
So a technical person might need all the facts and the figures and the reasons and the rationale and the accreditations and that aspect, whereas actually the person who might be initially thinking of a new product or a new service area might be looking for something with a slightly different lens or a slightly different view in it. So just to go back and think again of somebody new has come into the business, might be their first time of working with a marketing consultancy. Sally, what do you think their main fears, thoughts, trepidations might be?
I guess that they're going to lose control.
Yes, George said.
And I think, we keep in touch regularly and update on the progress that we're making, and if we suggest any changes or anything like that to the program, and we reallocate budget as necessary.
Yes, because plans have to be flexible, don't they? Things change, and some things, as Georgie said, some things might not work.
Yeah, definitely. I think what you said about budget, though, circling back to that, can be a big investment. It can seem like a lot, and there might be people who in the business might not agree with that investment. So that's going to cause a bit of trepidation, a bit like, oh God, what have I done? Yeah. But actually having those regular check-ins, having those very defined goals that you can measure against is really useful. And it can actually be cheaper than recruiting. As a business, we know how hard it is to recruit good quality people in the time frame that you might need. And potentially a consultancy or an agency can either fill that stopgap while you recruit, or is that stopgap until you grow and need someone internal? That might be a bit of a scare factor as well.
And I think it's also understanding that there needs to be a mix of different areas of expertise on it. To be able to ask for one person in a business to do every aspect of marketing is likely too much.
Yes.
Well, we've
all seen those job adverts.
But having that ability to sort of blend and get different views and perspectives on things. Yeah. And that's one area where I really love is when we have a new client on board and we've done the deep dive and the strategy, and then it comes into so could we do? How could we best deploy this?
Yeah.
Talking about our collabs and
Yes.
how we...
Yeah, as we sit down together as a team and start brainstorming, well, what would be good? This is the client situation, and how do we work with this, and what would be the best strategies for them? But we also on our plans assign who does what, so that the client knows, oh, okay, this is my responsibility and this is what Transform are looking after for me, which I think just clearly defines, you know where you stand with the strategy.
Yes, and on that point, in terms of really sort of looking at how to make that really important consultancy client relationship work very smoothly, that aspect of being able to be very clear what we expect back or what we need back from a client, I think is so important.
Yeah, managing those expectations sometimes, isn't it? When we need feedback so that we can schedule the work in and get it to them in a timely fashion.
And a lot, I mean, we have to be honest, a lot of working with an agency is we need something next week.
Yeah.
We're going to an event next month. Yeah. How can we make this work? So that setting that out at the start, that this is actually a partnership and it's a collaborative piece of work and relationship going forward, I think is the fundamental part of it. And that means actually finding an agency that you like working with and people.
Yeah, definitely. Those personal relationships.
Yeah, you got to like the people that you're going to be probably emailing a lot. Like, I can't imagine as account director, you must get so many emails from clients like every single day. And I know that like the account director or the account manager on Transform Digital, I know that he's in conversation with our clients, the same clients every single day. So knowing that you're going to have like a nice chat. And isn't there one of our clients that you regularly deal with who loves your monthly check-ins?
Yes,
a legacy client who just adores it.
Yeah,
has so
definitely.
much fun.
I think the last 5 minutes of the meeting are normally the work catch-up, and the rest of the half-hour meeting is just, so how is everybody and what's going on and what's the weather like? Are you all melting over there in America or?
and actually, but that sort of time to understand where they're at and what is important is a key part of it, because that of course you want to do good work, but you also want to do really good work for people that you enjoy working with. And I think that relationship is so critical.
I like all the different people that we meet as well. Like when Carolyn's writing content and she's interviewing all of these different subject matter experts in all sorts of different businesses. It's just, really great that we get to meet so many different team members and get their views. We've got the sort of we've normally got the central point of contact like they have with us, but we get to know all different team members as well, which I like. Yeah,
you learn so much. And even from the design point of view, because obviously I'm reading copy to make sure things match up well, I've learned so much about insurance and solar panels. And I know from the outside, some people might be like, oh, that's not very interesting, but I feel great about my insurance policies now because I actually understand them.
It does help,
it massively helps. But it's so interesting as well, like the unique industries the B2B clients can work in. It's just fascinating. And it's like, I want you guys to have this amazing brand that you feel proud about and shout about. And like, getting to know that client really deeply, that emotional connection really makes like, inspires you, or inspires me anyway, just to try my hardest.
Actually, when we were on a video shoot once, just all of the different team members that we met were just all so passionate about the company. It's like, oh, I love this company too. Like
that's lovely.
And being able to capture that as well is lovely. And then you feel really invested in the success of each client, don't you? And you feel great when you see them grow, or when new people come on board and you get introduced to different members of the team. I think is really lovely when you see that. You can reflect back on the small role that we play in helping that happen. It's a natural pause.
I was thinking actually, like, what happens when that relationship breaks down? You know, if you are a client who's the relationship's broken down with the agency, what should you do? Or is there a red flag to look out for to then build it back up again and build that relationship? Or searching for a new one? Like, when is the time to search for a new agency? Or when's the time to even search for an agency?
So I think if you're looking at at things from a first time perspective. So you might be an owner founder and actually you see the real need to get some expertise in. And before making that commitment to employ internally, you go out to an agency. I think it's about being very clear on both the expertise that they have that's relevant. Sally, you mentioned about listening.
Yeah.
And I can't overplay that in terms of an importance in an agency or people that really listen and seek to understand. And then for me, it would come back to values. And I think that works both ways. We turn away business when it's not a right fit for us. And that can be from a values-based perspective. It can be from an expertise-based perspective, where you look at things. So really understanding what's important to you, and hopefully when clients contract, they are doing it from a relationship-based perspective, that it's not just, I want to come to and get a video done and you'll never see me again, because that type of transactional relationship, I don't think delivers value in the long term.
Yeah.
So that really looking for values and expertise, and then people who really seek to understand. If you have an agency or you're working with a consultancy and it's not going right, I would say, and I would hope that any client that we work with that ever experiences anything like that is to be open about it. One of our values is a spade, and that which sort of underpins, well, it's one of the actions that underpins the honesty is the value, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that means sometimes calling things out, going, I'm not entirely certain. How are you feeling? Those can be difficult conversations, but actually if you can get over those, you can reestablish, can't you?
Yeah. And then doing it personally, I think sometimes as well, on a video call rather than over email, because tone can be misinterpreted. And yeah, definitely. So it's got to be that kind of face to face on a video call or in person if you can, and then you can read the room better. And I think everybody, once you've gotten over that initial awkwardness or uncomfortableness, then you work through it and it feels better, and it feels like you've moved forward as well and made progress.
And you mentioned, George, and you asked about red flags. What are the red flags? And I think people who don't listen. If you're feeling that you're banging your drum and it's not being heard, or you mentioned it about control, and when we're not seeking to take that away. If you feel that you're being forced down a route that you're not comfortable with, and the agency that you're working with is not picking up on that or properly seeking to understand and has got their vision in their mind about what you should do, I think that is definitely time to have a conversation with the agency, and then consider different options in terms of what you want. With the other what would you say are red flags?
If your agency or consultancy you work with aren't proactive, like it would really scare me if I had hired and outsourced and people hadn't got back to an email within like 2, 3, 4 weeks. Like that would absolutely terrify me. And like I know some of our clients have to go dark because of their work, or they might be on holiday and things like that. And luckily we communicate that they communicate to us with our clients. But it would really scare me if the agency wasn't chasing me. Yes. I'm almost like, surely if they're being proactive, an agency should be chasing me for things to do their work, rather than a client having to chase the agency or consultancy. That would be scary.
Yeah, if you're having to drive it forward and push and chase up and question and clarify, that's a lot of work when you're already potentially paying a lot of money to have something done. So that proactivity. Sal, from your perspective.
I guess if you don't trust them, if you are having to chase them, then I think you're losing that trust in them, aren't you? So, being a trusted advisor, knowing that you are going to get a response, in a timely fashion. It doesn't necessarily need to be straight away, but, as soon as they've got the reply that you need. And also, in a way, I think not making up the answer. If a question is asked and you don't get the sense that the person knows the answer, but they're giving you one, then that's dissolving the trust, I think. So if there's something that I don't know, I mean, I normally try and bring team members on to calls with me because I know that I'm not going to know all the answers if it's design or video or things like that. I have that support from my team members. And so it's always going away and getting the answer rather than just making something up, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And back to sort of quality, because that comes up, doesn't it?
Yeah.
About, they're just not delivering the quality that I'm looking for. What would you say in terms of if a client is looking at that as a red flag, how can you circumvent that to ensure that you get the quality of work?
I think from my perspective, a good quality brief can massively help mitigate those issues. So I think it's our responsibility to say, oh, actually, we haven't got all the, clarity. We need to just do maybe like a 10-minute, half an hour chat and going back to the client and having that communication. And also feedback from us, having feedback from the client of like, and listening to that feedback as well, actioning it, or us to say feedback to the client and be like, well, actually, we need X, Y, and Z to move on to the next step. So yeah, I think having a good quality brief at the very start, or project, or even strategy, to put that brief against to make sure we're actually aligned and you're not just making things for the sake of it. I think that would massively help mitigate those issues.
And also from a process perspective, the way in which we do it is take the brief and then do concepts if it's creative, or if it's content, do an outline, get approval at that stage before committing to full beautifully designed or beautifully written content, because also then the client has got an opportunity to sense check and to share internally about the direction and the way that things are going. So you hope with those sorts of stages, then actually the final product will be up to the quality. That's what we hope to deliver all of the time, isn't it? Is quality products.
That's what I was going to say. It's that sense check, isn't it? It's just, have we got this right? Have we misinterpreted anything? Just opening up that conversation again. But yeah, sense checking. This bullet point isn't quite right. Okay, we can change that.
We can amend that, and then if they really don't like purple and one of the concepts is purple, you highlight that right up at the start.
Yeah.
And how do you know? It sounds like an obvious question, but how do you know when an agency is really working well?
I think few amends. I think when it comes through, it's like, this is on point. We can take it from outline to first draft. I think, when we get minimal feedback from several parties within the business, I think that's when we're hitting it.
Yeah. That's when we all go, yes.
It is a great feeling when you, either have like one round of amends, particularly if a client might be very thorough with their checking. It's wonderful when they come back particularly and are like, yep, it's good to go. And you're like, oh, really?
Yes.
It feels so good. And
we had one recently that didn't have any amends, didn't we? And
that was shocking.
Like, yes.
I was like, yes, we're doing it. Because there'll always be little things, because, might be even just preference of the Oxford comma, for example. It's just little preferences. But I agree, that is always a great feeling. And I guess just achieving or excelling on those goals, those targets, getting that to that stretch goal that the client might have for a particular campaign is always really, really nice to know.
Yeah, we did that. I love it when the client, whether it's our direct contact or the business as a whole, just feels so proud of what they've got. And we did one for one small part of a large international client, and they received it and they shared it internally with their team, and every other part of the business was like, can we have one? Can we have one?
Definitely.
And that sense of pride and ownership, that whether it's a marketing manager or it's a business owner or a founder or a director, feels like like, yes, this is us.
Yeah.
And can feel very proud of it.
I love sharing the links when we get articles published, sharing that back with the client, and then you see it on LinkedIn a few seconds later. It's like, oh, this is great. Yeah.
Or seeing clients like in the Times when we had
Oh,
them
yes.
recently.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
That
It was
was-
just
yeah.
like, oh, that's so
And the
cool.
excitement,
Yeah.
the feedback, that it generated
Yes.
internally, where they could really share it, and being a highlight. I think from being a highlight in their week or
Yes.
in their month is so important. Thanks very much, George. Well, do that the other way around. George and Sally.
We're switched.
Yeah, right. You're a account director now. Oh no. Yeah, good luck.
Have fun on in design.
Oh god, yeah.
To be honest, I quite like that. Can we just finish on that?
Yeah, I thought it's real, it's honest.
I really like that. Like, end on a little bit of laugh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then could the caption say she's not George? Don't trust her with your designs.
All right, shall we end it there? That's it.
Or a little asterisk, they were not drunk, I promise.
It was June.
Be to be or not to be? That is the question.